Hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Pete. This series we're looking at a Suzuki Bandit and I need help. I asked for it in the last episode. At the moment I'm waiting for some replies, so I'm just going to crack on, take the tank off. I'm going to check the spark plugs on this, which are in here, so therefore I need to take the tank off to get to all four of those. I'll check them. Now this Bandit I bought on Facebook Marketplace. I paid £900 for it. I've easily spent a fair bit on it now. Off camera I've had a new tyre put on the front because the other one was completely bald, so I've got a new one there. There's no way I was going to test ride it without a decent front tyre on it. Are these original headers, guys? Can you help me? Yeah, there's a dodgy bolt there, but the other ones look like they're genuine ones in there. I hope you can see that. These are the headers. Are they original? Got to get rid of that tailpipe. I'm going to get a stock one. That could be potentially affecting how this bike is running. So for now, I'm just going to take the plugs out to have a look. That'll give us any indication if there's any dirt on there, what are the condition like, which cylinder's running badly. Once I've checked those, carbs are coming off again, so I've got to take the seat off, undo the fairing, airbox, take the side panels off, lift out the carbs, re-strip those, check that they're not clogged up again, see what needles we've got inside there, and jets, make sure everything's stock. This time I'm going to check the depth on the floats, and I'm also going to reset them screws. I can't remember what you call them. You guys will know what they are and you'll know what I'm on about. So I guess there's no time like the present to make a start on this. You don't need to see everything. I'll get the tank off and then we'll check the plugs together. Now the first thing I need to do is take the seat off so that I can remove the tank. I'm now getting a pretty dab hand at this. I've done this a couple of times now. And once I remove the seat and pop that aside, there's 4 bolts to undo, 2 for the fairing, 2 for the actual tank. Once those are out, the tank will simply lift back. Once that's lifted out, I'll just pop the tank on its side, being careful that it doesn't fall off onto the floor. Now when we're looking at this, I now need to remove the vacuum hose, which is just held on by a Jubilee clip, and then I also need to remove the fuel hose, which you can see has got the filter in there. I will not be using a filter. At this point, it's a few days after I posted my last video, so I've read loads of comments and I've got loads of advice. So thank you so much for every bit of advice that I've received so far. I am reading, I am listening, and I'm trying to remember all the information that I've been given. So once this is off, we'll pop that aside, and that will give me the access to where the spark plugs are, which are very deep. There are 4 of them on this motorcycle. It's got 4 cylinders, so we need to get in there. We need to remove the rubber tops. I thought I had the right tools to remove the spark plugs from this Bandit, but they're really deep. So I bought a tool from Alfred's. It doesn't fit. Which is this. I can't get that in deep enough to undo the spark plugs. It doesn't work. I've also got one of these, but you can't get in at the angle. Now I've got this one in at a struggle to get that out, but then the other one's there. I can't get that in unless I start taking all this lot off. Is that what you do? I could do with a ratchet tool like that goes in, and I could potentially. So I've asked in a Facebook group, what tool do people use and what size socket are they? Because I don't even know what size socket spark plugs are. So after sitting and rummaging around a little bit, it turns out I do have a socket that fits these spark plugs. So I've wasted my money on 2 spark plug tools that didn't fit. Trials and tribulations of learning stuff you don't know. Well, it doesn't matter because I'm getting the spark plug out, and that's really all I care about right now. Let's get the rest of them out and inspect them. So I've got the plugs out. I've labelled them up 1 to 4. Number 1 being near side port. As you can see, that I'd say that looks black. And there they all are. 2, 3, 4. I'll get a bit of diagnostics on that, and I'll see what my manual says. I have taken some advice on those spark plugs. I was told they were black and carbonated. I was also told that I'd be able to reuse those if I just wiped them down, popped them back in. Don't buy any just yet until this bike is running. I don't want to be wasting my money, 20-30 quid, on spark plugs. I've also been informed that iridium spark plugs don't work with this bike very well. Is that true? Drop me a comment. So once the spark plugs are in, that section of the job is done. Now, I am reading and listening to everything that you're telling me. Many people have advised me don't take out the carburetors again, but I've seen inside my tank at this point. It is still got debris floating around. The tank liner is still disintegrating. I did run this bike without that filter on, but it did have the 2 filters on the fuel tap on the inside of the tank. But I didn't trust that nothing had got through into the carburetors to block the jets again. This time I'm more confident. I feel like I know what I'm doing. I wasn't phased. When I first took these carburetors out, it felt like rocket science, but this, no, I know what I'm doing. I just labelled up my choke cable, the throttle pull and return, and then I started undoing the Jubilee clips from underneath. And then once that was done, the carburetors were fairly easily popped out. It is a little bit tricky to get the return cable out, so I have to use a little special right angle tool to get in there, but eventually I do get that out after sort of 5-6 minutes of fiddling around with it. It can get frustrating. If you're not a patient person, then you will be extremely frustrated. But I do get it off, and I do manage to lift the carbs out, and then I start to inspect them. I move them across to my trusty white bucket, I undo the drainage plugs, and then I begin to drain the fuel out to see what debris or anything else that comes out of there. As we can see in the bucket, there is a lot of oil floating around. That's what I use to clean the tank out and just to try and prevent any rust from forming. But as we can see, there is still some debris in there, so I'm expecting the worst inside those carburetors. This time I stripped down the carburetors, I cleaned the jets out. There was very little debris in there, but it gave me reassurance. I soon had them apart, I soon reassembled them, and I took out the mixture screws and I've reset those to 1 7/8. I did believe there were 3.5 turns to start with, but I've made some inquiries and I've also checked in the book after finding it, and yep, they are 1 7/8 turn or 2 turns. Soon assembled and back on the bike. I actually don't know if the camera will pick this up. This is one that came out. It's flat squashed, so thin, and this is a new one which is ring shaped, so I'll be replacing all those. Spring wise, new one, old one, I shall be replacing those as well. Now I believe I do it just so it tightens up, but not tight, and then I do it 3.5 turns undone, and that should be set, and I'll do that with all of them. So my last video that I posted, bit of a catch up, I posted that today. Whilst everybody's been watching and commenting on it, I've been running upstairs and reading them. People seem to mention the clutch. I don't think the clutch is slipping. I would probably be able to identify that, I would have thought. I drive cars for years. I have ridden motorcycles before, but I've never done out like this, you know. I think I would have been able to identify a slipping clutch. I'm not ruling it out, and I'm grateful for your comments. So where am I at? Well, I've got them carbs done. I've done those. A lot of people have mentioned the fuel filter, saying I put it in the wrong way. It's not the wrong way. The arrow is going in direction of the fuel. I've taken it off now. Where's the arrow? There. So that's the direction of the fuel, surely, going to the carburetors, from the tank to the carburetor. But what I have done, that is an extension, and that black bit is the actual length of the pipe. So I'm wondering if that pipe's too long. So what I've done is I've ordered a new 8mm there, cut it same length, stick that in, and then minus that length and put that, and try it that way. But what I have noticed is that this is full. It's not now, it's not on the bike, but when it was on the bike, this was full, so there isn't a fueling problem to this. So what have I discovered? Well, I've undone those carbs, and I've stripped them down. Who would have thought? I've stripped them down again like that this time. Not been worried about it at all. I've sorted everything out. I'll just turn camera around for you. So there's the bike. Carbs are out. It literally took me half an hour, I think, to strip everything out and pull carbs out. This job was a bit slower, stripping them down. I've got my 1, 2, 3 and 4, and I've got them down here as 1, 2, 3 and 4, so I don't mix them up. There was a little bit of debris in there, but nothing significant, and the jets weren't blocked. I checked float height as I was taking them out, and they're all about 16, 17. I'm going to check them when I put them back in. This time I've taken the mixture screw out. Now I believe it's 3.5 turns for the correct mixture. So I've taken those out, I've inspected the spring, and I've inspected the washer, and I've inspected the rubber o-ring. The spring was tarnished, and I've got new stuff down here. So what I've done is I've replaced the spring, the washer, and the o-ring that was in there was literally flat. Want a donut shape. So I've put new o-rings in there as well, and popped those back in, and they're all at 3.5 turns. Now I may have to balance that carb, and I've got a friend with a carb balancer for 4 carbs. So I'm going to ask him nicely to come through with that, and then we'll do that. I mean, I didn't think I'd ever do that. At this point now where I am, I've cleaned everything again, and I'm going to reassemble the carbs, and I'm just going to stop there for the day. I've got to get this fuel hose delivered, so I'll go online. I'll say, I don't know if there's anything on Amazon that'll do it. It's an 8mm bore is the one that's on the centre of it, the 8mm. That top bit is 6mm, but people were telling me they use 6mm on their Bandits. But petcock's all been refreshed. There's a hole at the top of the tank that's free. And yeah, the spark plugs are now back in, but they were black. So let me get the cars back together. Once I'd got the carburetors back together, it was time to put them onto the bike. So I'm looking at the fuel filter, and I decide to put a new one in, a smaller one for a motorcycle. And I've got some fuel hose delivered as well, so I decided to cut a piece that'll fit that. But first I've got to hook up the pull and return for the throttle, and then I have to attach the fuel hose, making sure everything is going in correctly. It's a bit fiddly, is its job. You need a bit of time and a bit of patience to get that return throttle cable on. Once that's back on the bike, I then start pushing the carburetors back into the frame, along with the new fuel filter, which I didn't know at the time. I'm putting it in the wrong place. It's the right way around, but I am blocking the air hose that goes to the airbox at this point. Again, I'm not a mechanic. It's trial and error, some of this stuff sometimes, but I do figure it out and I do correct it later on. Right, well, you live and learn. I've made my mistakes trying to put this bike back together, and I've forgotten information that you've told me. I do keep going back to it, I do keep reading it, I do keep trying to refresh my memory. So I've done some stuff off camera and I've made some mistakes, but I've rectified them before I've done anything. So number one is I put the carbs in and I'd set the mixture screws to 3.5 turns. They're not 3.5 turns, they're 1 7/8. So I've corrected that. The jets were clear. I've rebuilt the carbs, put them back in, and that's done. Now I've also put the filter back in, but I'm going to take that out now. The reason I put the filter back in is because that tank is still full of debris. That tank liner just keeps coming away and coming away, and there's huge bits in there. And as we've seen from the petrol that I put in that bowl, there are small particles, but luckily the jets were clear. So I can't use this tank without a filter in there. Now I thought I'd be smart and I'd be able to put the filter fairly close to where it goes in, but that ends up blocking where you attach your fuel, your air hose to your fuel, to your airbox. So I'm going to have to take that out. But I can't use this tank without a filter, because it'll block the jets straight away. I'm going to empty this tank out and I'll show you how bad it is. So what I've done is got this. It's actually the same colour bike. It's in a little bit better condition for minor dings. It's got a bit of a dint there, but that's kind of hidden at the top there. But the underneath is a bit rustier than what mine is, which I'm not bothered about that right now, because I know I can strip that off and respray that. I have no issues on trying to do that. So what I need to do now is get this tank off, empty it, show you the debris, swap these parts over, the fuel tap over, the hole here is clear, I've checked it, the breather hole for the vacuum. So I'll switch it back on when I've got the fuel hose replaced and the new tank on, and then I'll just go through a few checks and then I think I'm ready to go. So that's what we'll do. So that's changed over, ready to go. Got my fuel cap off, my fuel tap off. This is the old tank. I've emptied it of petrol. That's the new tank there. I'm just going to give that a quick swirl before I put it back on with some petrol. But check this out. This is why I can't run it without a filter. Look at that debris still in this tank. If anyone wants to buy a Bandit tank and can be bothered to clean it off, drop us an email. I won't post. Yours for a tenner. Slow progress, but I'm getting there. I've swapped the tanks over, swapped the parts over on the tanks. Made sure the breather pipe's clear. All parts on. Just need to fasten the airbox up. Get tank on. Go get some petrol and see what happens. Oh, I want to change that exhaust. That exhaust is so loud. it's embarrassing. It's all right for a kid, maybe a 5-year-old or something like that. That sounds fucking louder than an Harley Davidson, and they're bloody loud enough, but I feel an absolute knobhead, so I'm going to try that other exhaust. The bracket's round on there, the exhaust is oval, so I'm kind of thinking they might compress to the right shape. We'll find out. So before I get the tank on, I'm just connecting, we're all connected up and not loose with anything, putting everything where it's meant to go. I've been turning the bars to see if there's any pull on anything. Yeah, there's a bit of movement because that's what there is, but I need to make sure it's not pulling the choke. I need to make sure theirs are staying in place, the pull and return. The throttle. Not as good in, oh, it is returning, but it's not snapping as quick. So that's the pull. There we go, that's you. Followed you up there. Right, back to normal. So that's that. That was just the cable not having enough freedom at the handlebars. Because I've been pulling them through and pulling them out and yoking around. Tank on, fuel box to fasten up. I begged a screw for this side here. Put the filter back in, airbox on. So we're here again. Everything takes much longer than you think. That's choke. So she's running. Sounds even better. I've got a petrol leak. Oh, is it? Yeah. Leaking petrol, where from? I thought I'd done so well, stripping the carbs off a second time, putting them back together, putting them on the bike, starting the bike, but then when I look down I can see petrol leaking from somewhere. It's a drip, it's a rapid drip, and it's only dripping when the engine is running. Whilst I'm down there, I'm looking and feeling, and I get a cloth and I do dry something off to have a look to see if it continues to drip. I was wondering if I could have spilt petrol whilst I was filling the tank up. I've replaced the tank and I didn't have a petrol leak before. Could it be the tank? Could it be around the fuel tap? So I'm feeling all those areas and I can't feel any wetness around the fuel tap. I can't see anything leaking from underneath the petrol tank. but where I can see it leaking is from the carburetors. I think I've narrowed it down. I think I know what the problem is, and I think the problem is with one of the balls, the near side one that is nearest me, the rubber seal didn't quite fit in correctly. Now, I had to fiddle and jiggle to get that back in, and then I tightened it up. Perhaps as I was tightening it up, that has moved, because what I did do is I nipped them up a little bit tighter and the drip became less, but it is more of a seeping. So I think what I'm going to have to do is take that ball off and see if I can solve that. So that's it from this episode. The bike starts, it runs, it sounds okay, but now I've got a leak of petrol and I'm convinced it's coming from this near side ball, so it's all nipped up and everything. It's definitely not coming from, I'm looking at it here, no, it's definitely not coming from here, under there, and it's not wet on here, it is literally just coming from predominantly there, but it could be running from, I don't think it is, I think it's this ball, I think that seal might be nipped up. Carbs off, next episode, let's see how it goes, take care.